The desert wind howled across the Judean hills, carrying with it the faint rattle of loose stones. Somewhere in the darkness, an ancient drumbeat echoed, not of wood and hide, but of the earth itself, trembling under footsteps too heavy for any mortal man. The Hebrew storytellers called them Nephilim, the fallen ones. To the elders who recited the old tales, they were more than myth. They were the giants whose shadows loomed over humanity's earliest history, a race so powerful that even the strongest warriors quaked before them. The book of Genesis gives only a fleeting glimpse. There were giants in the earth in those days, the mighty men of old, men of renown. The words are sparse, but the fear they carry has echoed for thousands of years. And behind those words lies a deeper story of colossal beings born of divine rebellion, whose presence was a living reminder of a world touched by both heaven and hell. According to ancient tradition, the Nephilim were the offspring of an unholy union. In the days before the Great Flood, the sons of God, often interpreted as angels, descended from the heavenly realms. They were known as the Watchers, guardians set to observe mankind, but their duty became desire. Drawn to the beauty of human women, they abandoned their posts and took wives for themselves. The Book of Enoch, preserved in the Ethiopian Orthodox canon, tells how these angels taught forbidden knowledge, metallurgy, sorcery, the reading of the stars. And from their unions came beings unlike any the earth had known, monstrous in size, strength, and appetite. These were the Nephilim, neither fully divine nor fully human, yet greater than both in power. Their bodies towered over men, their voices shook the air, and their hunger was insatiable. Some traditions claim they consumed the earth's resources so voraciously that when nothing remained, they turned to devouring mankind itself. The age in which the Nephilim walked was one of growing darkness. Civilization was still young, but corruption had already taken root. Cities rose on fertile plains, their walls built not for beauty, but for defense against marauding giants. Sumerian, Akkadian, and Canaanite records speak of monstrous warriors whose weapons were too large for human hands. In Mesopotamia, legends told of demigods and kings of extraordinary height, able to hurl boulders as if they were pebbles. In Canaan, stories described men whose height was like the cedars and whose strength could crush iron. It was a time when the line between gods and men seemed blurred, and when human survival often depended on appeasing forces too great to resist. The first of our three giants stands at the very edge of biblical memory: Og, King of Bashan. His name appears briefly in the book of Deuteronomy, but the details are striking. Og ruled over a territory east of the Jordan River, in a land dotted with stone cities and fortified walls. Deuteronomy records that Og was the last of the Rephaim, a branch of the ancient giant clans said to descend from the Nephilim. The text even preserves a curious relic: Og's bed, made of iron, measuring over 13 feet long and 6 feet wide. Whether bed or ceremonial throne, it was a testament to his extraordinary size. Og's kingdom of Bashan was known for its fertile pastures, but also for its impenetrable strongholds. His defeat came at the hands of Moses and the Israelites during their approach to the Promised Land. Yet the fact that his stature and strength were recorded centuries later shows how deeply he had impressed and terrified the ancient imagination. The name Goliath needs no introduction. The towering Philistine champion who faced a shepherd boy named David remains one of the most famous figures in Scripture. But behind the Sunday school version lies a warrior bred for intimidation. The book of Samuel describes Goliath's height as 6 cubits and a span, roughly 9.5 feet tall. His bronze armor weighed as much as an adult man, and his spear's shaft was like a weaver's beam, tipped with an iron head weighing 15 pounds. Goliath hailed from the city of Gath, one of the 5 Philistine strongholds along the coastal plain. Some scholars believe he may have descended from the Anakim, another giant race linked to the Nephilim. The Philistines may have valued such giants not only as warriors, but as living symbols of their military supremacy. David's victory over Goliath was not simply a personal triumph. It was a direct challenge to the legacy of the Nephilim's bloodline, striking fear into a people who believed such giants to be nearly invincible. Long before David's time, the Israelites had already encountered another terrifying lineage, the sons of Anak. When Moses sent 12 spies into Canaan, 10 of them returned with trembling voices. "We saw the Nephilim there. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." The Anakim, descended from Anak, were described as towering figures whose size made any thought of conquest seem impossible. They inhabited the hill country, their fortresses perched high above the valleys, visible for miles. The fear they inspired delayed Israel's entry into the Promised Land for a generation. It was only under Joshua that the Anakim were driven from most of their cities, though remnants survived in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod, the same region where Goliath would later rise. The flood narrative in Genesis has long been seen as a divine judgment, not only on human wickedness, but on the corruption introduced by the Nephilim. If the Watcher's offspring were a violation of the natural order, then the flood was heaven's way of cleansing the earth. Yet the scriptures note that giants appeared again after the flood. This raises one of the great mysteries of biblical history. How could they have survived? Some traditions claim that a few of the Watcher's offspring found refuge before the waters rose. Others suggest that the fallen angels returned after the flood, repeating their union with mankind. Whatever the truth, the persistence of giant clans into the era of Moses, Joshua, and David suggests that the shadow of the Nephilim was not easily erased. The biblical accounts of giants find echoes far beyond Israel's borders. Greek mythology spoke of the gigantes, born of the earth and the sky, who waged war against the gods. Norse sagas told of the Jotnar, frost giants who existed before the creation of mankind. Even the myths of the Americas, from the Choctaw to the Inca, speak of colossal beings who once roamed the earth. In the ancient Near East, giant figures often symbolized chaos, rebellion, and the threat of forces beyond human control. For Israel, the Nephilim were not just enemies of the body, but enemies of the covenant, living reminders of a time when divine boundaries had been broken. For centuries, explorers and scholars have searched for physical proof of biblical giants. Reports of enormous skeletal remains have surfaced in the Americas, the Middle East, and Asia, though most have been dismissed as hoaxes or misidentifications of large animal bones. Still, certain archaeological sites, massive stone fortresses in the Levant, or megalithic structures in Bashan have fueled speculation. The ancient city of Ashtaroth in Og's kingdom was built with stones so large that modern engineers debate how they were moved. Such feats of construction raise the question of whether the legends of giant builders had some basis in reality. The 3 giants of Genesis, Og, Goliath, and the sons of Anak, represent more than mere enemies of Israel. They are symbols of the enduring human struggle against forces that seem too great to overcome. In the biblical worldview, the defeat of giants was not just a matter of military skill, but of divine authority. Each victory, whether Moses over Og, Joshua over the Anakim, or David over Goliath, was a reminder that no matter the height or strength of the adversary, the God of Israel reigned supreme. Yet their stories continue to fascinate because they speak to something primal, the memory of a world where the boundaries between heaven and earth were breached, and beings of impossible stature walked among men. As the night deepens over the ancient hills, one can almost imagine the sound of those heavy footsteps fading into the distance. The world has changed, kingdoms have risen and fallen, but the tales of the Nephilim remain, whispered in scripture, echoed in myth, and carried forward in the human imagination. They are the giants of Genesis, the three that terrified the ancient world and whose shadow stretches across history. You've just uncovered another hidden chapter of history with animated Bible mysteries. If you enjoyed this journey, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story where the Bible's words, ancient legends, and divine mysteries come together. Until next time, heaven holds the secrets. Never stop searching.